planned. And it was just, that was it. You just didn't plan anything for a Tuesday night. And if something came up, we had a special meeting.
Okay.
Don't give the mayor ideas.
I know.
Yeah.
But I can assure you, if you choose to do that, I don't want them to be 3 hours long like they are now.
Agreed. Mrs. Fetty, I saw you had your hand
Yeah.
up.
I have quite a bit to say about this. First of all, I would love to understand who wrote the municipal order. Was it Mr. Blankenship or was it Mr. Wickman?
What was the question?
Who wrote the municipal order?
I did.
You did, okay. So what I cannot understand is who authorized the use of taxpayer money to create this municipal order. Because it's my understanding, according to when we were talking about the chicken situation, that it had to be a vote in order to ask you to create a resolution, a municipal order, or an ordinance. So I can't understand, because I didn't know about this until it was already created. So I just don't understand that, first of all. My second is I want everybody to make sure they understand that this not only takes out the mayor from presiding over the meetings, it says, accordingly, the committee member with the most seniority as a member of the Erlanger City Council shall preside at the committee meeting and conduct those meetings in conformity with the following procedures. So we are now going to have rules on who is the most senior?
Of the most senior member of that committee would preside, because someone has to preside over the meeting, yes. And historically, that's been the way we've always done it, with the senior member presiding.
So is it the
who?
most senior of all?
Of the committee, of that committee.
So it changes throughout the course of the meeting?
So who actually runs the meeting, though?
The
I mean,
senior member-
if you have 7 different committees,
The chair of that, each
but
committee would run the
so
meeting.
basically you're going to change who's running the meeting each.
Because each are
So
separate
these are
meetings.
you're wanting to have.
Because each committee is a
semantics.
separate meeting.
This is semantics. We're playing word games, as my dad would say.
No, I disagree.
Yeah, I agree. Next, I mean, nobody shall address the committee without first being recognized to speak by the chairperson. Nobody shall interrupt anybody who has been recognized to speak by the chairperson. So basically, our idea of having an open dialogue, open communication, talking about ideas, hashing out an idea, and throwing out the pros, throwing out the cons, shut it down. Because you have to be called on.
It is not shut down.
Well, it specifically says you must first be recognized to speak by the chairperson.
That is correct.
So you cannot have a conversation if at every point somebody has to be called on.
That provides order and structure to those meetings.
And that's for a council meeting. This is for a committee meeting where we are supposed to be brainstorming and getting things done.
Well, that's your opinion, ma'am, but others are of the opinion that there needs to be some structure
So is it a
to the
council meeting or is it a
committee
committee
meetings,
meeting?
because everybody's talking at the same time without any respect for anybody, including the mayor and including members of the city council. It happened last time. That's why that meeting lasted 3 hours.
And that meeting was one of the most productive meetings I have ever been a part of in this group.
I don't know.
I have seen, for the first 2 committee meetings that I was a part of in January and February, it was just status quo. We just did what we were supposed to do. When we actually sat down, we had conversations. I saw more productive things getting done. We had a fantastic conversation last committee meeting. I cannot believe that the differing of opinions is so drastic. I was proud to be on city council because of how we conducted that meeting, other than the inability for all council members to participate and try out an idea. Other than that, we talked as a group. We had conversations. We were able to look at each other, have eye contact. I thought it was fantastic. That's how you get things done. This is shutting it down. This is putting more rules and restrictions, and it's so unnecessary. We're here for a common goal.
person, I agree with you.
Yeah, we are here for a common goal. We all need to work together. I agree with that.
Yes. You thinking that we should table
just-
this until
Just saying, we're still
legislation?
on the reports of city operations. Maybe we should move this discussion when we get to the legislation.
I don't know that it makes a whole lot of difference. I mean, I think we might as well continue the
I'm gonna have to go
conversation.
potty soon.
I went already once, if you noticed.
Okay, so in 2.1, it mentions KRS 61.805 through 61850, I think is what it's supposed to say.
That's correct.
Okay. And inside that part of the KRS 835 says that all meetings are to be, there's to be meeting minutes taken,
Yes.
which we don't do right now. Is that the intention?
I think they
It is-
should be.
It is the intention, and I think we do. Sherry does not identify them as minutes. They are not as detailed as the minutes of the city council, but they do meet the definition of a meeting in that they record who is present at the meeting and what actions were taken.
Okay, so as long as we don't put the words council and meeting together, then we can have the minutes without calling it a council meeting.
You have to have minutes of all meetings of committees.
Okay.
Even the committee, the
Well,
ad
we
hoc
don't- we're not
committee
doing it
that
right
you're
now.
suggesting would be required to have minutes.
Sherry, am I wrong? We
We currently don't take minutes, I just take notes.
But I think what Mr. Wickman is saying is those notes would qualify as minutes under the definition of the statutory definition.
That's correct.
Aha, okay. But we don't publish those.
They don't publish
So
them.
now we would need to publish them?
No, we're not required to publish them. You
They're
can if
open
you want
record.
to. You don't have to publish what you publish now. You do it as a matter of choice. The same principles apply to the minutes of a committee.
All right, I don't have that statute right in front of me. I don't know if anybody has access to that. But I thought it said that they had to be published before the following meeting.
I don't think so.
What statute, Mayor?
61.835. Well, I don't want to belabor it. If nobody else wants to discuss that any further, I think that, to me, the litmus test on good law versus bad law is, when you're making a law for a specific one-time situation, without necessarily paying attention to, would this have applied to the previous mayor, or will it apply to the next mayor? It seems like it's a bad idea when you're pinpointing a specific circumstance. A good law shouldn't matter who's in charge or who's running whatever. Good law would be something that's going to stand the test of time, and this just doesn't seem like it's something that's going to stand the test of time.
This law will not expire when you cease to be mayor. It will be binding unless repealed, if passed. And I would respond to a couple things. You said the goal is to shut the public out. That's simply false. Actually, the order specifically says it's subject to the Open Meetings Act and the Open Records Act. That increases transparency, not shutting the public out. You said it's about seating. It's not. It's about the idea of recording the meetings and making sure we have a record, because that's useful for the public and for council. So I think you've misrepresented the scope of this order. You've misrepresented the intent of this order. You've said it excludes the public from speaking. It does not. It allows anyone to speak. They just have to be recognized by the member presiding over the meeting, so that there's some method of order to the proceeding, so that things do not go on forever and people talk over top of each other. So what you have said about this is just simply false.
I think, that's fine as long as you're saying that, right now.
Well, I am.
The reality is that those words can be construed as something else by someone else in the future. And that's where I'm saying it's bad. Because somebody else in the future could say, you know, Joe Public wants to come to the meeting and say something, and it would allow someone else to say, sorry, can't talk.
I would imagine
This is limited to those subjects referred to that committee by motion of Erlanger City Council at a regular or special meeting thereof.
I seriously doubt that any member of this council is going to preclude members of the public from speaking unless they no longer wish to serve on this council.
Even if they're coming to talk about stop signs for the 18th time,
Have we cut them off?
or talk about chickens for the 13th time.
Did we ever cut it off?
Let them talk.
No.
It was the desire of some.
You should have been here for the
Wasn't
power
mine.
plant.
The power plant was a big one.
Oh, my God.
And
All
then they
right.
denied what they said. That's why I think they should be
That's why
recorded.
recording's a good idea.
We had a big to-do over that.
All right.
Horrible.
If there's no other comments there, then we'll move on. Go ahead, Mr. Nicely.
Oh, have we been having meetings where we're not going with the code, but the law? Are we violating some ordinance?
No,
Meetings we have?
no.
No.
Well, we're discussing it, can't we just go ahead like we're doing it?
That's not what this municipal order is at. This municipal order is asking that we change it.
We're going back to the original, is what we're doing.
Well, I can see why the council doesn't have anything when we got 3 lawyers here.
Oh, shoot.
My God, I'm going to the restroom.
All right. Okay, if there's no other discussion or comments, then we'll move on to the city administrator, Mr. Fields.
I'm not finished with my.
Oh, okay, I'm
report
sorry.
here.
Well, excuse me.
I do want to talk about the codification that we've been working on for, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. Ms. Fetty, in regard to your comments about the cost of preparing the municipal order, there was no cost, period.
If you created it,
I did.
you have,
Capped on his
do
feet.
you not get paid by the city?
Not for this.
How so? Is that
Because-
not part of your responsibilities?
The contract by which I'm hired has a maximum on it. I've reached that maximum some time ago. I haven't billed the city since January.
Okay. To my other question then, who authorized you to do this?
It was requested by a number of members of the city council.
Was there a quorum?
Was there a quorum? No, ma'am.
Because in order to make decisions, we need a quorum, and then you vote.
There was no decision to be made, ma'am. They indicated they wanted a ordinance that limited the authority of the mayor to preside at city council meetings. I recognized what they wanted. I went ahead and prepared it.
Okay, so then why in the world, when it was the chicken situation, did all of us have to vote in order for me to ask you? Or was that just a,
That was a vehicle.
it only works in some situations? I don't understand it.
That was a unique situation, ma'am. The purpose of that vote was to identify the likelihood of any further, that's not the right way to phrase it, was to put to an end the discussion of the chickens. That was the reason that was done
Put it to an
that
end
way.
before we actually followed
It was
through.
unusual, and it was only done in that particular situation.
I'm so glad you're saying that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, the difference is it was you, Jessica, not the other people.
That's not correct.
That's exactly what I just heard.
No, the difference was we were trying to see if there's any
What was the
consensus for the
difference
chicken
then? I
ordinance.
mean, honestly, I don't understand it.
The difference was, we all said we were going to vote no on it, so why?
But I didn't even get a choice. Nobody asked me whether or not this could. I at least went through the effort to include all of you in the decisions. I took all of your advice. I went above and beyond. This is behind backs.
I don't know about being behind the backs, ma'am. I do know that I was requested to prepare an ordinance, or an order. I did that. To whom that was circulated, I do not know.
It was circulated to the entire council last Friday,
Yeah,
I
it was sent to
understand.
everybody.
which is hardly behind
After it was
anybody's
done.
back.
After it was done, you mean?
Or you get.
Well, it's
that
hard
what
to
you're saying?
distribute something before it's done.
I don't think the chicken fine has been paid yet. Do you know?
Well, in any event, moving on to the codification.
Yeah, get off the
We
chickens.
finally got it done. It's available online for you to inspect. It's on the agenda tonight for the first reading. It should be finalized and printed by the end of May. That's the report on the codification. If anybody has any questions about it, I'll be glad to respond to them.
Anything else?
No, ma'am. No, sir.
All right, then we'll move on to the city administrator, Mr. Fields.
Thank you. Just a couple brief things. On the agenda, it's talking about the new radio system that we talked about at the last committee meeting. I know that there were a couple people that weren't here. Did update you, there's going to be some real increased cost to us being a part of the new radio system that Kenton County, Boone County, and Campbell County are building. So looking at all of those things, we started looking at our options, and we made a suggestion after I met with the fire chief, the police chief, and dispatch manager and the employees about whether or not it was time for us to start discussions with Kenton County. I think we were all in agreement. Well, I know we were all in agreement that it was time to begin looking at this due to the cost of not only this upgrade of the radio system, but future costs that are coming down the road when it comes to dispatch. So we began that this past week. I met with county officials, and we've come up with what we want to do for the next 2 months. And the fire chief, police chief, dispatch, they're already meeting on this. We're going to do a functional analysis. So the functional analysis is basically saying, what are we doing now, and how important is that? And if, in fact, we move to county, can we continue to do those same things that we're doing today? That's been put in the hands of the chiefs and the dispatch manager, who have included line first responders in that analysis to look at that. We've kind of set aside the month of May and June to look at that, and then come back sometime at the end of June, 1st of July, look at it, see what progress has been made. The resolution that you're going to hear tonight is simply saying that we're looking at this option. It's not saying that we're going to consolidate with anybody or we're going to close down our 911 dispatch center. It only says that we are exploring those options and looking at doing, seeing if in fact it makes any sense to move any further. I will say this, Kenton County is going to read one next week, the same resolution about providing these services and looking at providing them to the city of Erlanger, Ellesmere, and Crescent Springs. Ellesmere is going to read one supporting this same notion of exploring this option. Feel free to contact the chiefs if you have any questions about just the particulars of what they're doing right now, or myself at any time during this. I know there's a lot of concern. I know there's a lot of hot topics about this issue going around, but please go to the source, and the chiefs are probably the best source to go to about this now and what this process is. So that's what that resolution is tonight. If there's any questions, I will be more than happy to answer those tonight if I can. Ms. Kyle?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I would just ask that when we explore our options, it would be helpful, I think, for council to see something written down, like what we would spend if we did dispatch on our own, what we would spend or not spend if we go with Kenton County. In other words, have things written down that we can see and make a good decision. But I agree, I think it's time to explore options. But I would just like to have something in writing as things develop that we could look at. Is that
Our
okay?
goal is to provide you with that at the end.
Usually
of
you
this.
do.
Yeah, so that will be our goal.
Okay, thank you.
Not only on the expense side, but on the functionality side.
Yes, yes.
Because I think that's the
key, yeah.
two issues.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Anything else on that part? Okay. So let's talk about committee meetings for a minute. I would love to have a committee meeting in May, if somebody would put it on the agenda, to talk about
We may still be here.
group home rentals that are coming up within the city. There we are seeing a lot of what is being called, I think, recovery properties are coming around. They're all dealing with our drug addiction problem that we're having. We're seeing these crop up all over town. I myself have one 2 houses down from me. It's been there for about a year now. I also have one next door to me. It's been there for about 3 years now. So I do know that people these are cropping up all over. Mr. Hahn and I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the guy that I believe owns 4 or 5. So they're in the business here, and we're going to find out some more ifs, ands, and buts about it. But I believe the city of Newport, and we've been doing some investigations, have just passed some kind of legislation to try to at least put some kind of controls on these from cropping up next door to each other. So I think there are some federal regulations that we're going to have to abide by about allowing them, and of course all of our, maybe not all of our zones, but allowing them to be here, but maybe put some restrictions on them. So we would love to have that discussion at a committee meeting in May to get this moving forward. I do believe that this person, at least we've been approached, we're not sure if it's the same person or not, but I think it is. It's looking to buy a vacant lot, and on that vacant lot, he wants to build a couple of these, maybe duplexes on these lots that would house these. So it's becoming an issue, and we need to try to be proactive on it and try to look at it. So if we could have, if it needs to be a motion or whatever to get that on the agenda, we'd love to have that. Also, to follow up on what Mr. Blankenship said earlier about the finance clerk's position, we hope to have all of that hiring completed sometime within the next couple weeks. Talked to the mayor yesterday about that. We all should be able to be done about the next couple weeks, and we should have Ms. Porter here at the next council meeting to introduce her to council. So, that's all I have.
All right, wonderful, thank you. You've heard the reports of our representatives and city operations. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mr. Cahill. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried. All right, correspondence. Mrs. Hoffman, do we have any correspondence this evening?
Yes, sir.
I do have one item. You guys will like this, believe it or not. I know this will probably make some of you sick at first, but you're going to like this.
Oh, how cute.
Very angry citizen here. Dear Mayor Hermes, thank you for coming to read to our class. You are really nice. I loved the books you read. You are really funny. I think you are the best mayor I have ever met.
You're right.
This is the part you're going to love. Parentheses. I have never met a mayor before. I'm glad they shared that. I love how funny you are. Your friend, Emma. She's from Arnett, second grade at Arnett.
That's darling. Yeah.
That's the only correspondence I have.
You need to frame that one.
Yeah, that's adorable.
All right, next up is citizens' public comments. Oh, thank you, Mr. Hahn. All right, first up, we've got Mr. Gary Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I have a request just around this municipal order that everybody was discussing, and that is to delay that so that us citizens can have a chance to actually read it. Typically, we get a chance to actually read the stuff that's up here, municipal orders and ordinances, so that we can make appropriate public comments. I feel that we're not really given the opportunity to do that right now because we haven't had a chance to actually read that municipal order. The second thing that I wanted to bring up, and as I was looking at the proposed fiscal year budget for fiscal year 17-18, that's going to have a first reading tonight. As I was looking through the numbers, I see about $210,000 that are missing. There's money coming out of the general fund that is not actually going anywhere, so I'm curious as to where that's going. I guess that's directed to council as a whole and maybe specifically the finance committee on if they have answers to where that $210,000 might be going. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Next, we've got Mrs. Georgette Nordlow. All right, thank you. That's all we have signed up. Did anybody else want to speak? Mrs. Dietz?
since Gary spoke, I wanted to speak too. And I don't have a curfew tonight, so.
Should I set my timer?
No, don't do that. Since the chicken issue came back up in the discussions tonight, I wanted to address a part of that municipal order that was never written. But part of the municipal order for that would have contained the provision that adjacent property owners would have to consent to having chickens living next to them. I think the city should, I think it's a great idea, concept for the vicious dog ordinance and the potentially dangerous pit bulls, because not all pit bulls are dangerous. But since that's more of a safety issue, if someone is living next to a potentially vicious pit bull and they can't let their children use their yard and are afraid to go out on their street, that's a whole safety issue, and being able to use your own yard. So it seems like that type of a provision in that ordinance really would make a lot of sense and might help people who are subjected to living close to vicious dogs. There was a man last week, I think over in Cincinnati, that, and not a child, but a man who was mauled to death by a pit bull. So even though they're not all dangerous, many of them are. And if you live near a dangerous one, maybe you should have some provisions to protect yourself from that. So maybe something that council may want to consider. I also had a question for the city administrator concerning that ordinance. When you talked about the fact that many people are not registering their pit bulls, they wait, you know, and the police figure they have them, and then, right, they aren't doing it proactively, I think you said, right?
Yeah, probably. I don't remember this conversation, but go ahead.
Well, so if you have a pit bull or a vicious dog and you don't register it, and they find that you have one, is there a financial penalty to that?
Yeah, there can be, absolutely. If
How,
a citation
there can
is
be?
issued.
How much is it?
So the codes enforcement, it's the same as our codes ones are. So it's, what is it? It's 100 for the first, 250 for the second, 500 for the third. So if they don't do it, they got to give. It's under the nuisance ordinance now, so it's under the codes enforcement. It's not nuisance. I'm sorry, we don't have a nuisance anymore. Okay, it's under our codes enforcement. So you have to give time to remediate. So if in fact we find that, they have to be given 7 days in order to correct it.
Okay. I mean, that's probably one reason that people who have pit bulls, that they're not registering them, are not registering them, because when they do that, they would have to pay a higher insurance rate to have that pit bull. So why would they take on that extra cost if there's really not much of a penalty to not report it? So if that's an issue, it could be that that penalty should be higher, so that it makes them more, encourages them to actually register the pit bull in advance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that something that you think that should be discussed at a committee meeting? In more detail?
Does that ordinance cover other things besides the dogs?
I don't know.
Actually, there is a vicious dog ordinance that covers the dogs itself, the vicious dogs, wolf hybrids, and those kind of things. So it covers that in itself. There's other ones that are in the other codes part of it, but that one is a separate ordinance by itself.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Pit bulls is?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So which committee would discuss that?
I would suggest that would it be police is what I would suggest, that they're the ones that definitely are getting the complaints and doing it. I would think it would fall in police or codes. Police or codes, that's what I just said. So yeah,
Okay.
So if you guys want to have a committee meeting, then that's fine to discuss it any further about what that is.
Okay. So I would request that that be put on the agenda for the next committee meeting. All right. If there's no other comments, then we'll move on to bids. Mrs. Hoffman, Mr. Viox?
No, sir.
Any bids to review? Good. All right, any old business to report? Mr. Nicely?
I had some slides I wanted to show. Have you still on the agenda?
Yeah, I think we can talk about it in old business or new business. This is Alice Street.
Yes. How many people knows where Alice Street is?
I do.
Good for you.
Yep, we do.
This is what Alice Street, and we're looking to beautify our city. They're doing Dixie Highway across the street. This is the railroad. This is the junk they have out that you can see, trash. I believe this is, that's what you see there, some of it. Go to the next. Next. That's more of it. The junk, hoses, crossing. He lives across the street. And that. Go to the next one. This is where, over there where it shows, is one of their old rails they got on the bank. This is where the city had to whistle at one time, they took it down. I don't know whose property that's on, but that's there. They didn't remove it. Get there.
So is that city property or is that railroad property?
That's a good question. A lot of this is a railroad, but how much city, I don't know.
Okay.
Now, we can come back. That's some of the hoses they got up there. That is strictly railroad property. Okay. And this is part of the street here where all the vehicles, where they unload used cars, the railroad's got their heavy equipment, tears the blacktop up. If somebody's going to unload something on down the street, they park the blacktop, all the heavy equipment on the side here. Supposed to be no parking, but they do it. And they block the street. Fire truck cannot get through there. We shouldn't have that. Should it? Well, that's a hose in there. This is blacktop. You can see where it's cracked. This is a fence it's supposed to have. You can see the railings broke down. Is that something that looks pretty to look at?
Nope.
Okay. A lot of people uses the street. Would you be proud to drive down that street to your house? I know the railroad's not pretty, but we have to have them. But we don't have to have this. So it's up to the city to see the railroad and the city, whatever part they have in it, to do something about it. And the blacktop, you can see where it's cracked. That's damaged city property. If somebody does this, shouldn't they be liable for it? And why do we have to have, when they unload from the car lot, why do they have to pick Alice Street? You can't, they block the street.
So they unload on Alice and then cross
Yes.
over the rails
Yes, they do.
into the car lot?
Yes. Another, and if they're blacktopping a mile or 2 miles down the street, they bring the equipment there and park it. That's where they use it from. And this heavy stuff, and the railroad has got the heavy stuff. Now, they go onto their property, but they use our streets to do this. And they've got some heavy equipment.
I think part of it's catching them in the act. You know, we got to catch them.
Please?
We've got to catch them in the act. You know, that's part of the tough part of it.
I don't understand, didn't understand.
If somebody parks a backhoe or a car carrier, we've got to catch it. We can't do anything about it if we don't catch them in the act of breaking the law.
Oh, there's no problem. Because when they're there unloading, when those big carriers, they're there for an hour or two. And this equipment, they leave it overnight.
Okay.
Parking ground for all this big stuff. If they didn't have Alice Street there, where would they park it? There is room between the street and the tracks. But there's no park. Who owns it, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Have you called the police on it?
No.
That'd probably be the next best step. I mean,
They pass by there all the time, and they got the station, the old police car station. Police up and down through there all the time. They see them. They got to see them. You have to call the police every time you see somebody breaking the law for 2 or 3 hours at a time.
well, yeah, it would be helpful. I mean, sometimes we get so used to looking at the same thing over and over that we're not necessarily paying attention. I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, but.
But when they leave the blacktop equipment there, that's big.
Yeah.
That's there overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And the police patrols it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I have to call them for that? If they go down the street and they see that somebody's breaking the law, aren't they supposed to give them a ticket or something? Okay. And you want to beautify a city, but look at the street over there. That's a disgrace. Now, and I think the city should do their part cleaning it up. And the railroad, they've got the rails, it's on the other slide, where the pipes, I guess they made a fence at one time. I don't know. But if the railroad should either tear it down or put it back up. So what is the council suggestion on that then? Don't say, I see it, call the police. There's hundreds of people that drives there when there's a train that is blocking the rail tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's only 2 houses on Alice Street. Okay, and they're in good shape. Now, to come along with the houses that we got, which I own one of them, my boy owns the other one. You don't see my house too much, but you do see his house. And it's a nice looking house and a yard. Now, somebody should be able to do something. And here I'm on council, and they say, bring it up to council meeting, which I'm doing it. But now, you can get the sidewalks up here and all this, that's great. You can beautify Dixie Highway, but hundreds of cars use this at Alice Street. Now, who do we go to? Who do I go to?
So today, after I received these photos from Mr. Nicely, I said, today, after I received these photos from you, and I told you this earlier tonight, that I sent these photos along with the request to our property, the person that's in charge of the rental property, that Jason Chapman, that was supposed to be here at the committee meeting and then showed up the next day. I sent this to him, asking him to let me know who, in fact, I needed to direct this to see if it got cleaned up. We had the same issue that happened down on Crescent Avenue, with the property on that side of Crescent. We brought this to Jason's attention, and it was cleaned up within, I don't know, a month. Rick, wherever, it was about a month, wasn't it? Took them to get there and get it all done, and they have now gated that, oh, not gated it, but they put concrete barriers up so people can't get back through there and dump and do some of the things that they were doing. So hopefully we'll get them to fix the fence and pick up some of the, and it's like I said, it looks like scrap to me, and I didn't know how to describe it.
It's the old ballast. When they jack the tracks, because the Stevenson Road crossing, they jack it about every 4 or 5 years. When they do that, the equipment that operates off the tracks casts the old ballast aside and puts new ballast down, and that's old ballast you see. That's what looks like stone.
Yeah.
That's what the track, they used to be the bedding for the ties, and it's been disposed of there.
Right. So asking him to see if we can address this. So I'll get back to everybody as soon as I hear from them and let them know on that side what's going on. I know Mr. Bogart looks at the street all the time and some things down there, so about the paving and what that is. I do know, and Chief, if you could help me here, I do know that there's a state law that allows people to park on Dixie Highway and on the state roads to unload and load. I'm not so sure about our city streets and what that is, because I don't know that issue has ever, that I can remember, come up before. But you cannot prohibit a truck. That truck could stop on Dixie Highway and unload those cars. The same way a delivery truck can go up to Furniture Fair or any of the businesses along there and load and unload. They're allowed to park on Dixie Highway to load and unload. I'm gonna say this. I don't know that there's anything prohibiting it. Like Mr. Wickman said, we've been looking at this codification for the past, I can tell you that I've read it, the recodification, like the past 2 days, I've done nothing but read it. I've read every one of the parking and every one of the traffic regulations, and I didn't see anything in there that prohibited loading and unloading parking, on the street to do that. So we may want to look at that to see if, in fact, we can do that.
Answer to that.
Yeah.
People on Alice Street, and on the end of Timberlake and Elizabeth Street, if we need the fire truck, and they got that blocked, they've got to go all the way down and come back up to Timberlake to get to Elizabeth Street, or they don't know it until they get over there. They cannot get through Alice Street when they're unloading something. It's closed.
I can get with Mr. Bogart. We can look at that area and talk about maybe some ordinances and some signage that we can put up there to address that. But I'll get together with him tomorrow or Thursday, and we'll look at it.
Right?
But whenever time we need emergency there, and you come over and you see that's blocked, you've got to go down 1, 2, 3 blocks to get back up to Elizabeth Street. Or if you knew it, I guess you could go on down to Hallam and come back up. But that's not the quickest way.
Right.
And you're not going to get one of the fire trucks or even the medical truck through there when they got it blocked with the truck.
If it's blocked, it's definitely a safety issue, and we'll take care of it.
That's right, it's a safety.
Yeah. So if it's blocked and no one addresses it immediately, I would suggest calling, because obviously no one's seen it. But we can look at, like I said, putting some signs up there once I get together.
There is no parking signs. But now you're talking about the car lot. They can park. There's room on the end there where they can unload on the parking lot itself.
Oh, yeah.
But it's other equipment too, not just that. It's other equipment too. If you get one of them blacktopping machines that just crawls, it's blocked for some time.
Well, so Mr. Field said he's going to talk with the gentleman from Norfolk Southern. Chief Wilson is going to work with Director Bogard to try to resolve this.
And there's one other problem with the railroad. That is a switching station. Nobody likes the horns But every time a train comes up, they've got to toot to their buddies over there in the building where they switch. That's unnecessary. You do have to, I can understand the whistles, but not unnecessary. Let's hoot to say hello.
Okay. And then maybe that's something else that you can talk to Mr. Chapman about?
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay. Thank you.
The railroad's not very good neighbors.
No, I can attest to that. All right, thank you, Mr. Nicely. Can we move on?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so any other items under new business to discuss this evening? Go ahead, Corinne.
I'd like to bring something up in committee in 2 weeks. Just slot some time to discuss some avenues to get started on getting Stevenson Road replaced.
Okay. Thank you. Any other items? Seeing none. Mr. Cahill?
What did you need, Mr. Fields, on the housing? You need it for May though, right? But we can do it now, correct?
Sure.
Sure, for your housing. So you need a motion to discuss the halfway houses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The operation of halfway houses within residential neighborhoods, yes.
That's a motion.
Motion?
Second.
And a second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so then can we also have a motion and a second on the Stevenson Road and Alice Street? Motion by Mr. Cahill, second by Mr. Blankenship. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. And then we also had Mrs. Dietz mention the pit bull registry. Oh, thank you for the correction. Sorry. Yeah, maybe it's just force of habit. Excuse me. It's, okay, so Ms. Dietz mentioned the pit bull registry. Can we also have a motion and a second to discuss that? Motion by Ms. Fetty, second by Ms. Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Were there any other committee items? Okay. Thank you. All right, so then moving on to legislation. We've got our first item of legislation is an ordinance regarding the sidewalks, second reading.
It's an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, repealing in its entirety ordinance number 2103 in the Erlanger Code of Ordinances, sections 97.065 through section 97.069, all related to a property owner's obligation to repair sidewalks. By summary, we have struck through the portions that are to be deleted, which is all of section the sections that are identified here, which is all of the sections that deal with a property owner's obligation to repair sidewalks. All the remaining sections as it relates to sidewalks, such as you cannot block them, you cannot obscure them, you have to still remove debris from them, those are all still in force. This is a second reading calling for a roll call vote.
All right, do I entertain a motion? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mr. Cahill. Any discussion? All in favor, or no, excuse me, geez, oh Pete's. Roll call vote. It's getting late.
Mr. Nicely?
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Nicely? Vote yea or nay on the sidewalk ordinance?
It's okay.
I think that's a yea.
Ms. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fetty?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sudkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore? Ms. Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, motion carried. Next one is an ordinance regarding the recodification, first reading.
It's an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, adopting by reference the codification of Erlanger ordinances prepared and published by the American Legal Publishing Corporation. By summary, it makes the recodification a part of the permanent records of the city and adopts the provisions of that recodification by reference.
All right, Mrs. Hoffman, to please note the first reading in the minutes. Next is an ordinance regarding the amended fiscal year 17 budget.
It's an ordinance of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, amending Erlanger Ordinance Number 2435 and the budget adopted thereby for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2016, and ending on June 30, 2017. By summary, the attached budget amendment that outlines the revenues and expenditures is attached.
All right, so the city clerk to please note the reading of the first, in the minutes, the first reading of this ordinance. Next is an ordinance regarding the fiscal year 18 budget.
This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, adopting a budget for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2017, and providing that no money shall be expended by or on behalf of the City of Erlanger except in accordance with that adopted budget. Again, this is pursuant to KRS 91A030, and attached as an exhibit are the revenues and expenditures in summary format on the combined operating budget.
All right, Mrs. Hoffman, I'll ask that you please note in the minutes the first reading. Next is an ordinance regarding the employee pay and classification, first reading.
It's an ordinance of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, establishing a personnel pay and classification plan for all Erlanger employees and non-elected city officials. By summary, the ordinance complies with KRS 83A.070, parenthesis 2, by identifying each class of employment in the city by title, and also provides for the range of compensation for those positions of employment.
All right, Mrs. Hoffman, will you please note?
It's effective June 30th, or July 1st, rather.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mrs. Hoffman, will you please note the first reading in the minutes? Next is a municipal order regarding surplus property.
Yes, the agenda is actually misidentified as Woodward and Division properties. The person or the group that was getting ready to acquire those is not yet ready to do so, so we are not ready to surplus those properties. However, this is a municipal order of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, making the written determinations required by KRS 82083 for the sale or other disposition of property owned by the city, and the property that is being surplused is identified on Exhibit A, being a John Deere tractor, a Tough Stuff cable crossover, and an Odyssey 5 universal machine, and the disposal method has been identified also on that exhibit.
Right. So was the published agenda the Division and Woodward?
It was supposed to have a backslash in there, and I don't have it between properties and surplus property.
Oh, okay. I don't think that doesn't seem like it's a big deal.
That makes sense.
Okay. All right, so do I entertain a motion that we adopt this municipal order as read? Motion by Mr. Montgomery, second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is a municipal order regarding the amending personnel policies.
It's a municipal order of the City of Erlanger, Kenton County, Kentucky, describing the essential functions, qualifications, duties, and other characteristics of the positions of employment, establishes it by ordinances of the city, and amending the personnel policies of the city in regard to them. Again, by summary, the city administrator has described those changes to you. It's a municipal order, so it only requires one reading.
All right. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt this municipal order as read? Motion by Mrs. Sedkamp, second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carried. Next is a resolution regarding dispatch.
This is a resolution of the City of Erlanger. I'm not going to read all of the whereases. The gist of this resolution is that it's council's blessing council's acquiescence to beginning discussions with the Kenton County Fiscal Court to discuss opportunities with the dispatch centers. All this resolution does is authorize Mr. Fields and other members of the city staff to just begin those very preliminary discussions with the Kenton County Fiscal Court.
All right, do I entertain a motion that we adopt this resolution as read? Motion by Mr. Blankenship, second by Mrs. Pitts. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried. And then finally is the municipal order that we added to the agenda. Regarding the procedures for meeting of committees of the City of Erlanger.
It's a municipal order of the City Council of the City of Erlanger, Kentucky, establishing procedures for the meetings of the committees of the Erlanger City Council. Copies of them have been distributed to the members of the City Council before this meeting, and it's been discussed ad nauseum.
All right, a motion. Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Sudkamp. Any discussion? Mr.
So
Cahill.
I'm a big fan of Robert's Rules of Order and having some structure in committees. I do have some concerns with this, with hearing the debate back and forth tonight. So I just want to let you know that I'm still have an open mind, but I want to have some more discussion before I would vote yes for this.
Mrs.
I'm the
Pitts.
same way. I like the reason this is presented, but it's just kind of the wording.
Okay. All right, how about a roll call?
I agree with Corinne and Tom.
All right, roll call vote.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would move that we table this until they can have the further discussion they would like to hear.
Okay,
I appreciate that.
Allowed to do that?
so that,
That's a higher order motion.
okay,
The table takes
Right.
preference.
Right.
thank
So
you,
need a second
thank
on
you.
that.
Need to have a second on that and a vote.
We're in stereo tonight, Frank.
All right, yeah, I get it out of both ears. Okay, so we've got a motion to table, second by Mr. Montgomery. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, with that, do I entertain a motion that we adjourn?
Oh, wait, we got executive session. Need a motion to go into executive session. Motion, and state the reason, please.
Motion to go into executive session to discuss potential litigation.
Right, yeah.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss litigation under the KRS.